Well, good morning, everybody. How are you? It's nice to be able to spend another Wednesday morning with you. We have Michelle off today, and we have Erin manning the chat and gracing us with her wisdom also. So good morning, Erin. She's sitting like right next to me, and we're ready to dive in today with Phil Horvath, our guest. This is week 36. Reminder, this was going to be a 5-week project. Here we are, week 36, and no signs of slowing down. Use the chat. We'd love to hear from you. If you have comments, questions, please use it. This is a roundtable. The roundtable is produced, curated, sponsored, all of that by Qnity. We're thrilled to have you join us today. And then we also have some sponsors, Aura and Vish, great sponsors. If you haven't listened to the videos where we had them as guests, it was truly great education. Last week's guest was Sam Broccato. Sam, I think, has joined us again this morning, as he usually does. Sam, I just love to get to spend time with you, and the feedback we get is great. We should have you as a guest all the time. All right, so Sam earned his second $1 million light bulb. Sam would be getting that to you. So Sam, thanks for joining us last week. And you always not only provide great wisdom, but also inspiration. And today we'll also get to hear wisdom and inspiration from Phil Horvath. Phil has a great extensive background in part of the beauty industry that many of us haven't experienced, as well as a scale that we haven't experienced. Coming from a variety of different, very, very large beauty industry companies such as Ulta, Regis, Hair Cuttery, and he's on to a new venture, which you'll get to in a minute. So, and Phil and I go way back. We'll get to that in a moment. Past recordings are stored in the Plan for Profits portal. It's a body of work in and of itself to be able to listen to people like Sam and Van and so many other great guests that we've had throughout these sessions. So we will not have a roundtable next week. I am going to California. I am going to enjoy a little bit of sunshine, and I'm going to miss all of you, but I'm not going to miss being in Minnesota. So we're going to take a week off next week. We have an amazing brain trust that Phil is now going to be part of. This is our wall of fame. I still think we have some missing people on here. Phil, you will now be added to our brain trust officially as a result of this. Such great wisdom and contributors, and thanks to all of you that have been part of this. And we're going to get more and more of you involved in the future. So the 9 grid is a tool that you can use to create a mind map with this session today, take notes, etc. It should be sent out with your invite. Remember to use the chat, and without any further ado, I'm going to stop the chat. And then Phil, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Tom.
For perspective, where are you today? You're out east, is that correct?
I'm out east. I am just about 30 minutes outside Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, as I refer to it, the three-ring circus at times.
Absolutely. And you are moving to Denver, is that right?
I am going to move to Denver, Colorado. That is right. In the fall, I'll be heading out west.
All right, good. And that takes us back to when you and I met. I remember when I first joined the beauty industry and I was in distribution, and I think you were our biggest customer back out in the day out in Denver. And so you're returning to Colorado, and but boy, connect the dots in the last 25 years for you. You've had a hell of a run as a beauty industry executive, and with some amazing results. And let me see. So kind of take us through your resume here a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Well, I first started off, so I'm going back to Denver, as you indicated, and that's great news for me because that's my hometown. I grew up there. I'm a native of Colorado, and I really was born into the beauty industry originally. My father and grandfather were both hairdressers, and we had a family business in Denver that was under the trade name Michael the Carlisle, which was a full-service spa salon business. Started out as one salon, then eventually got up to 50 locations between Colorado and California. So I always joke, my playroom was a dispensary. That's kind of how I grew up and hung out in my early days. And and then eventually worked in that family business as well too. Once I've got out of college, and spent a number of years working for my father, and then eventually we did an exit strategy and sold that business to Regis Corporation.
Yeah. And then you went on to read just for a little bit, then moved on from there, right? Just to maybe help with the transition, was it?
Yeah. So went to Regis, and life's lessons you learn everywhere I've gone. I'm a big on learning, and lifelong learning, and the Regis adventure was great because it got me into a large scale business. Learning large scale operations across hundreds of locations, and also a franchise component. But you also learn what potentially it's not for you. And for me, the culture really wasn't for me. What I came from, a family business, very dedicated to the salon professionals, and Regis didn't quite have that in their DNA to the degree that I really, enjoyed being a part of that, and seeing the success of salon professionals. So after a short stint there, several years, then ended up going to Ulta Beauty, who's based out of Chicago. So I lived in Minneapolis actually for a few years, up in the cold north, and then headed to Chicago to join Ulta Beauty in kind of in their early stages of their development.
Yeah. And I remember we got to do a little bit of work together. And then when you were in Chicago, and then you moved on to another family business, but a family business at a scale that many of us are not used to. So tell us a little bit about hair cuttery.
Yeah, certainly. So I went on after Ulta to Ratner Companies, which owns and operates the hair cuttery chain of salons. They also own another trade name called Bubbles as well too, which is more full service type salon business. And it was a great business, privately held, to your point, by the Ratner family. Started here in the Washington, D.C. area 45 years ago by Dennis Ratner and his family, and just created an incredible privately held business, right? That ultimately at its high point was exceeding over 400 million in annual sales revenue, and over 800 locations. So when you think about that, for a private business with, Dennis Ratner was a hairdresser. I mean, that's how he got started, as a hairdresser himself. His father owned a salon here in DC, and it was amazing to join that organization because of what they had built. But at the same time, it was really about helping to really look at that organization and look at the future, and how do you transform it for the future, and how do you start to put things in place that perhaps weren't in place, in large part because when you get to that size, it's sometimes difficult to pivot and make changes because of the amount of size of the business. It's I refer to it as turning around a battleship, right? It takes a long time to get that thing turned around.
Well, and you were in the midst of this, and then this thing called a pandemic hit. And you ended up having an experience that you're going to share with us today that you wouldn't wish on anybody really, which basically, there were some realities in the business that probably got revealed during the pandemic, and it led you on a journey. And I'll let you share that story. Now, just for our group here, I know that, Phil and I talked that we have a lot of your mainly independent salons, one location, maybe two, maybe three, whatever for. And I think all of these lessons, while they're at a big scale, I think this is so relevant to all of us. So your experience with hair cuttery, and how you spent many months last year.
Yeah, no, sure. And you're right, Tom. I think that the experience, even though it's large scale, there's lessons for everybody. And because when it comes down to it, it's every business has similar principles and fundamentals and things like that. They're just different in terms of relative scale, right? So I think for me, and as you alluded to, was quite the challenging past. If I look back 12 months, right? Actually, I just had a text conversation with a good friend of mine early this morning, and just how it feels kind of surreal that, hey, here we are 12 months later, after the pandemic really kind of started, and all kind of still dealing with where we headed in the future. And for me, it was a challenge because as running a large scale business that as I indicated, I'd give me a hurricane any day. Not that I wish a hurricane on anybody, but when you deal with being shut down for 3-4 days, 100 locations, you can weather the storm, right? And you can get through it. Well, nobody would model out, closing down, 700 locations for several months and beyond, right? Depending on the state that you operate in. And at the same time, we, just transparently, I was in a business that, I was there to help turn it around because we had some inherent challenges in the business. And, the good news is 10 months prior to COVID, we had really made good progress to make the investments to turn the business around. Our sales were actually growing again. Our customer counts were flat to slightly growing. So things were looking better. But once the pandemic hit, and given some of our internal financial challenges that we were working through, it became a very challenging scenario for us to try to deal with from a just financial perspective. And obviously, as a privately held business, we grew with banking partners. So we had a banking group that helped, fund growth for us, and, carried some debt for us and supported us. And it was a situation where they were willing to help, but not to the extent we needed to really make it through successfully to what would be the other side of COVID, which at that point in time, this goes back to, last year in April or so, you just didn't know, right? Nobody kind of knew what that would look like. So, really for me, that was, gosh, I look back on my career, and I would say probably the most challenging part as a leader, darkest time in my career, to have to face, what options did we have? What could we do to survive and really get the business hopefully to the other side of COVID. And unfortunately, in those types of situations, you start to have to go to options which are never good. I mean, no option you pick at that point in time is going to be a great option. And for us, one of the options was to find an emergency buyer, somebody to really kind of rescue the business financially. But what that meant is, by having somebody to come in to do that, is it wasn't simply that they were going to put a bunch of money in the business and help support us through COVID. It really meant they had to come in and work with us in partnership to take it into a bankruptcy process, which, again, I've never experienced bankruptcy. I've heard about it, but never really understood the process to the degree that I was going to experience it starting back in April of 2020. And to be quite honest with you, it's, as you mentioned, I wouldn't want to wish that on my worst enemy, because it is an excruciating process of going through to determine making decisions that affect, thousands of people's lives. And obviously the pandemic, we had to do that already with furloughing people, 10,000 people. But then at the same time, when you do the bankruptcy, you're now, changing your whole expense structure, the business model, everything to get the business to a healthy state. It's, I equate it to, you're really on life support, and you're trying to figure out how to get off life support, right? Is, if you want to use that kind of analogy. So extreme measures have to take place, and they're very, very painful measures. And just was, I share with everybody what I went through in that process. Anything else I face in business will be a cakewalk, because that challenged me like no other time that I've been challenged in my career.
Emotionally draining to the max. It has to be intellectually, emotionally. I mean, family business. I can't even imagine at that scale. You said you had to furlough how many people?
So we had roughly about 10,000, salon professionals within our group. And then, so we had to furlough that entire group, and also included all the support staff out in the field. And then at our resource center, we had about 100 folks in a resource center, and had to take that group down to basically 20. I mean, we called it kind of our hibernation crew. It was really a team left to kind of hibernate the business. And we did the right things. Listen, it's never easy, but executive team didn't take salaries for 2 months, right? And then took reduced salaries for a period of time, and all those things that are the right thing to do, but painful nonetheless. And it wasn't about me and the executive team, to be honest with you. Our whole premise, or our whole goal was, how do we survive to really save as many jobs as possible? I mean, for us, that was our motivation, is let's save, because all of the team that had been there, a lot of people had been there in the industry a long time, but either we were associated with hairdressers, or had family of hairdressers, or were hairdressers. My head of ops was 38 years employed at the company, and started as a stylist and became the senior VP of ops, right? And so it's just, again, I can't express enough the emotion and the challenging emotions that the team went through. It's extremely painful, but at the same time, as you and I chatted, it's one of those things where at your darkest moments, and I'm sure people in this group have experienced this, whether it's in personal or in business, when you're at your darkest moments is when really you really reflect internally, and your ability to then also reach out and connect with others, other human beings, other people that are either people were colleagues with in business, people that friends or family, whoever, that really help you kind of start to understand that there's always options, there's always hope. I'd say that's first thing. There's always hope, but there's always solutions and options to figure out how you can get to the other side. It as painful as they may be, but there's always hope and there's always those options.
That was the part that really just jumped out at me when you said that, because I have seen that so many different times. And when you said that when we were prepping for the call, I'm like, yes, go there. That's such an important thing to convey. When you think there's no options, you haven't looked hard enough. There's always a way. Talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that it is really about understanding that us as human beings. The way I reflect on it is that we have that's the great thing about being human beings. We have the power of choice, and we have the power of thought, and really figuring out what are the choices we have, and working with, again, I think what's so important is you seeking out counsel in those situations. Again, I've always been one, as I'm an operator at heart. So it's always, hey, I can do it. I can muscle through it. I can make it happen, right? Type of mentality. But there's times where you just, need that other help and point of views and people. So I was very purposeful about who I reached out to, who I seek counsel from. Not only the people right around me, the immediate group around me in business, but, again, other peers in the industry. I mean, there were people that, I've known for years, 20 years in the industry, that, and one actually, a gentleman that I reached out to, Pat Neville, who's been in the industry a long time, and Pat ran multi-unit as well, and Pat experienced some bankruptcies himself, right? So he was somebody I called right away and said, hey, walk me through this. What's going to happen? What am I going to experience here? What's going to be the biggest challenges I'm going to face? And just that conversation helped start to reframe my mind around what I might have to do and the difficult decisions I was going to have to make. But at the same time, I could get through it, right? So I just would encourage everybody. That's always the best thing, is you A, have hope, but then B, find those solutions, reach out to people who can help you with those types of solutions.
Yeah. I think that is a amazing lesson, and it seems it's so fundamental. But when you're in the dark moment, the tendency for many of us is to turn inward and to try to be the lone wolf and do it on our own. So that's two really big things that I think all of us can apply. One is there's always a way, and number two is don't try to do this alone. There's people that are going to help you and support you. And so what other lessons from that whole experience before we get on to what's next for you? Because you're onto an exciting next chapter here,
Sure.
and
Sure.
which we'll get to that in a moment. So
Yeah, I'd say the other lesson, Tom, I think for all of us is, hey, listen, we all have had, because of the pandemic, right, and what we're dealing with in business, we've all had to learn to do with less, right? We've had to restructure our businesses. We've had to be more agile. We've had to think differently, right? And I've used this last 6 months or so to really talk to a ton of people in the industry, outside the industry, and everybody's had to experience that. I mean, that's I guess the one hopeful thing I have about the pandemic is that we all have experienced this. The world has experienced this. And so it's been a lesson, a global lesson, right? Of many things, from being agile, doing with less, obviously valuing human connections more than ever, right? So I think all of us have gone through this, which nobody thought, I would never thought in my lifetime we'd experience this, right? I had parents that went through World War II and went through a lot of strife in Europe, right? And in their generation, this is in my mind a generation defining moment for all of us. And I think we have to take those lessons and now apply them to business, personal life. And on the business side, we've had to do with less. So how do you, as a business owner, now know that, and I'm going to be facing this in my next group I'm going to, is they've made a lot of changes, and now it's like you're almost rebuilding your business. You're coming out of the pandemic, you're trying to do your best to forecast your sales and your business, but at the same time, how do I restructure things as I do grow, that maybe, hey, I don't need that function, or I don't need that role, or I don't need that expense anymore. I can live without that, but I can use that for something else now that I know will help my business survive in the future and even thrive in the future, right? So I think that lesson of agility and just thinking differently, I would challenge all of us to not lose that. I guess as you go into business, challenge yourself, whether it's a monthly session with your team or whoever, to always say, have that question, what if this were to happen? Because again, in business, especially as you get larger, planning for risk is everything, is a big part of what you do. You could never plan for 100-year pandemic, right? But we almost have to start to think that way, to say, well, what if another pandemic would hit? How would we handle that now, right? So that would be another, I think, great learning and an aha for all of us.
I remember having some conversations, and I knew you were going through this, and I was just maybe gave you a little text nudge here and there. I knew you were 24/7, but I was just, thinking about you type thing when we're all going through this. And then when we did talk, which probably wasn't well, we're on the Beauty Changes Lives board together, and
Yep.
which is awesome to serve with you. I know we have Linnell on this call too, and maybe some other board members. And we've had a chance for like pocket-sized connections throughout the months here. And I remember the first like conversation we actually had. You said something that became a little bit of a theme for you, because you said it way back, I think in the summer, then you said it when we talked last week, and that is this whole thing, if not now, when, and the conscious decision to fight versus run away. Speak about those thoughts for a moment here.
Yeah, no, that's great, Tom. Hey, listen, for me, it's one of, I've always, like I mentioned, been a learner and learned from a lot of things. I did some leadership development a long time ago, and one of those was learning that as human beings, we've our natural inclination when we reach challenging times or moments is to fight or flight, right? It's that innate unconscious reaction. We don't even realize it. It starts at the unconscious level, right? And so for me, this epiphany of what I was going through at that time, and then looking at the world, kind of hit me as, if now is not the time to do some things very different, to push myself, push the industry, push others to do things differently, to really make an impact, when is the time? To me, it's just, and I've always operated my life thinking that as tough as things get, listen, I've had a great life. I've had a good life, and people always have it worse off than I do. I know that there's the people around the world, right, and in our country even, and so, but they still do great things. Some of those folks, right, they grow up, or and being in DC here and seeing some of that from a political standpoint, and some people here that have really just historically, done phenomenal things for this country. And so for me to say, what can I do for the industry, differently now, that really hit me very hard, to be quite honest with you. And because I think as we all, at that final moment, and, in life, when we go to the other side, I think we all want to, go to that other side knowing that we've done everything we can to, help others and help, whether it's your immediate family or also in kind of that business, industry and environment that you're in as well too. So, I get emotional about it, because to me, it definitely was an emotional time.
I remember talking to you when you sort of had gotten through the whole Ratner and hair cuttery, and now you're in a point where you're going to pause a little bit here. You finally had a little bit like, okay, I'm done, new owners, and you've done your job, and you had several different opportunities, including some from outside the beauty industry. And I think there's some about a tattoo parlor, a chain of tattoo. There's you mentioned a few different opportunities, but here you are. You must have a love for the beauty industry. You ended up. Why don't you talk about where you're going next here?
Yeah, sure. No, thanks. Yeah, I definitely had a lot of reflection time and thoughts, and just funny, the tattoo industry, and the next venture I'm going to find a way to tie that into what I'm going to do, to be honest with you, because the tattoo industry, and for those that have tattoos, which I do, well, I'm not going to show you today in those private parts, but the point is, it's an industry that is what the salon industry was 20 years ago. Still very fragmented, right? Very, very much so, but very much now getting a lot of investors and a lot of professional management in it. So But so as I looked at those options for me, I always gravitate back to the beauty industry because that's what I've done. I love it. I grew up in it. I have family in it, right? And if I can stay in that industry to give back and to help that industry continue to be better, help salon professionals, barbers, stylists continue to, because what energizes me is getting up every day to know that that single mom or that person that works for my organization that I work for is able to have success in life and support themselves and their family and grow their income. And, that I never lose sight of that. And that just comes from working in a family business where our business lived and died on those stylists being successful or not. Right. And so I was able to strike up some relationships with the Floyd's group. They're out of Denver, Floyd's 99 Barbershop group. And, a great group. There's family, the O'Brien family started this business back in 1999 in Denver, Colorado. And, they had this idea of kind of that barbershop, modern barbershop concept, right? One of the first ones out there. And they just and they're not from the industry. These are guys from the food service industry. They work. It's a great story. They came from Maryland here. They got into business by working vending at sports arenas, selling cotton candy, things like that, right? And you think of that business, and it's a big business, and that's how they kind of made their mark. And then they started this barbershop concept. So I struck up a conversation with them and got to know one of the brothers, and really it was 3 months of conversations, just helping him. To be honest with you, it was a weekly conversation, really helping him through the pandemic, and hooking him up with other financial people to maybe help their business. And for me, it was whether I ended up with them or not, that didn't matter to me. In the end, it's hey, how can I help somebody else get through the pandemic and get to the other side? But it turns out that as they look to the future and trying to grow their business and come out of the pandemic, really with some great strategies, it just happened that we found a good connection and started a relationship, which in March I'll start in Denver and working for the Floyd's group and helping lead their organization to the future, which I'm super excited about because again, it keeps me in the industry, but again, it connects me with stylists, barbers, and who I truly love.
Yeah, I'm excited for you too, Phil. I'm so curious to see what you do with that business, because every time you go into a business, you have your signature on it in some way, shape, or form. It's a better business when Phil comes in. I know that. So, question here: what advice would you have to people that are in the flight mode? A lot of business owners coming to me ready to throw in the towel. But is that the right thing? I mean, how do you know when it's time to fight versus flight? Yeah.
I would say, it's obviously different for everybody. And I would say first and foremost is you have to, within yourself, believe that you have still the passion for what you're doing, right? So fundamentally, that is to me kind of the initial thought process, because if you don't and you're not going to be fulfilled in what you're doing, you're not going to feel that it's right for you and keep you happy and your family or whoever. That's one first indicator, to be quite honest with you, because as much as you then try to financially manage things, it's in the end it's not going to probably work for you. So that'd be first. But then second, I think is definitely taking that time then to, when you're looking at fighting on, is again working through what those options are to figure that out, because they're always there. I mean, it's and always knowing and thinking that I there is a solution. I'll figure this thing out, and I always say people have it worse off. So don't get. And I say that because it's so easy to slip into the, hey, I just want to give up on this thing mode, when in the end you should say to yourself, listen, people really have it worse off than I do. So this is a great day. It's sunny outside, and I need to figure this out. And there are solutions to do that. And again, it's all about people. What I've learned over my 30 plus years is, connecting with people in the industry, outside the industry, is where most solutions lie. None of us have all the answers.
Mm-hmm.
None of us are that smart. I'm college educated, great, feel good about it. But in the end, I learn as much from, the stylist that works for us, that I go out and visit and connect with, as much as I do from somebody like yourself that's also been educated and has really thrived in business as well too, right? So I firmly believe that you can learn from every single human being on this planet.
Yeah, that's great wisdom. And there's so many pieces to what you're saying resonate with me. And the connection piece is so huge, and the asking for help, during the whole, I talked to Patrick. I know Patrick, great guy. He's what a wonderful resource he would have been for you. And I really love that perspective. If you prognosis for the industry, obviously there's a lot of pandemic's been an accelerator in so many different ways. You're very well connected. You're a great contributor. You're on boards. You do a lot of stuff to give back, and you've got to have some perspectives as it relate to the industry. And there's workforce trends, there's retail trends, there's all different trends. Anything that just kind of jump out at you that's so top of mind?
Yeah, I would say, listen, I am very, very hopeful and bullish for the industry. As challenging as it gets with the pandemic and how people are struggling, especially I know you've got some groups here that are from California and they've had to go through multiple shutdowns, right? For me, it's the beauty of our industry is the human connection that we are, whether you're a skin therapist, a stylist, a nail tech, whoever, that won't go away. If anything, I'm a firm believer, even before the pandemic, that the touch industry that we're in will continue to get better and better because of the fact that as technology accelerates, and pandemic has shown that technology even has accelerated much more, that human connections mean more and more because you'll have less of that, right? Because you are just, whether it's your car is self-driven, whether the bus you get on is driven, all those things over the next 20 years are accelerating at a pace that I don't think anybody us really truly understood. And now COVID has brought it to light. So our industry has tons of opportunity to take advantage of that. The key is, how do we do it smart, in ways that allow us to really be a great industry. And that's, leads me to, plug for Beauty Changes Lives, is that, for me, it was being part of a group that was thinking bigger about how do we ensure that the industry can not only survive, but thrive. And a large part of that is defining to get younger, individuals into our industry. I just watched a good TV program recently that on PBS where they interviewed and talked about, trade schools, right? And trades and plumbers and electricians and, hairdressers, right? And guys, we have a great trade, but we need to let everybody know about that. And parents out there are thinking of, hey, I really don't want to plunk down 40, 50,000 a year to send my kid to college. Let's get them into a trade. And if they're passionate about beauty, our career is great. So how do we now figure that out as an industry? I think that's working together as an industry to figure that out, coming together to solve those problems, because the way that I view the industry setting up is very positive, but we have to be ready for it to take advantage of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, Christine asked a question. What are some other opportunities you see within the industry, similar to your comment on the tattoo industry? Anything else jump out at you?
Yeah, I would say collaborations of that, right? I think we've got to think kind of broader, right? It's how part of the beauty of the beauty industry is it's great people. The people, everybody, we're givers, right? We love to please and we're givers. But at the same time, sometimes we're insular in the way we think, and versus looking outside the industry, say, who else can I partner with out there in business that allows me to help me, but I help them as well too. So I'd encourage anybody out here to say, what other like businesses are out there, service businesses maybe, that I can partner with that are like-minded, maybe have the same purpose in business I have, but we can benefit from each other, right? So whether it is that tattoo parlor, whether it is a makeup studio, there's just so many things that, rather than doing it yourself, because sometimes you think, well, I got to do it myself, put in my own business, put in, my own structure. No, think about, there are other people that are like-minded that, it's not about having everything for yourself, but even a revenue share type situation, right? That's okay. So you get 10% of it versus, 50% of it. But that helps diversify your business. because when you come on the next challenge, the more diversified you are, the better off you're going to be and healthier you're going to be, right? I think it's important to start thinking that way. And there's many opportunities. You just have to kind of, brainstorm yourself or challenge yourself to think differently in that sense.
All right. So before we close out, do you have any favorite quotes? Do you have any favorite bodies of work? Do you have any favorite things that really help build your mindset?
Yeah, I would say here, I will close it out, is I think one of my quotes that I always, and I think it was Maya Angelou, it's, you know, people, will always remember how you make them feel. They very remember, what you actually did. And I think I live my life that way, and my leadership way as a servant leader, to really believe that how I make people feel and how I touch them in my own way is going to be the most impactful thing. I, in my career as being an operator and visiting hundreds of thousands of salons, I always enter that salon with that in mind. And when I walk out of that, they better feel great, because in some way, shape, or form, hopefully I've touched them, that they feel better about not just working for the organization that I'm leading, but that they feel great about as a human being working in this industry and contributing to, their families. I mean, that's most important. I never lose that, and never will, to the day I move on to the next side. So, and then just friendships and partnerships. And Tom, personally, I mean, it's been great to know you over the years, and you've similar had, great love for the industry, and have really, what you're doing now with Qnity, is I really support that. And, I won't forget, and I'm not sure if it was Erin or your other daughter, but I will never forget the time I spent with you in Minneapolis visiting when you worked for David Wagner and the Aveda salons. And Tom said, "Hey, do you mind if we go? I got to pick up my daughter from, I think it was preschool. I don't know where, but I remember in that parking lot, us talking about life and business. And because I think at that point in time, I was expecting my first child, maybe, right? And I'll never forget that. It was a great moment for me as a colleague, and I really appreciated that time we had together.
That's awesome. I see you over your left shoulder. You have a couple of boys. I've never had the chance to meet them. I know that they're soccer guys like you, and they're all grown up now, huh? How old are your boys?
They are, yeah. Well, one is 21, a senior in college, about to enter the working world like all of us, right? And the other one is a senior in high school and going to be entering college. And I think like all of us, with our kids, to me, it's the lesson, hopefully, that I've tried to share in the last year has been resiliency, right? It's hopefully they are now going to be more resilient in their lives, because let's face it, I mean, my kids have been spoiled, and they've had to learn some challenging lessons the last 12 months. And I'm hopeful for them that they will take that with them into their futures as well.
Well, you're getting a lot of great comments here. You might want to read them. So let's give you a big virtual applause. Phil, thank you.
Everybody.
And I'm very pleased to award you the $1 million light bulb, okay? And welcome you as a member of the Brain Trust. And we'll have to have you back on as a guest maybe a few months or so after you get settled in. Well, it'll be more than a few months to get settled in with that type of scale. But we'd love to have you back as a guest. Does that sound good?
I'd love to do that. Really appreciate it. And to everybody out there, listen, keep up the faith, keep up the hope. There's always hope. And, we're almost to the other side here, and great things ahead for all of us.
All right. We'll see you at one of the board meetings soon. So thanks again. I'm gonna go ahead and so guys, give Phil some comments, if you will. Phil, read the comments. Meanwhile, let me see what else I've got for you guys before we wrap up here. I really loved this session with Phil today. It was awesome.
And say hi to my friend Sam Bercato. Long time no see, Sam. All the best.
Awesome. All right. So listen, speaking of help, if you are doing it alone, we are here to help with coaching, Qnity in action. It really addresses breakthroughs in growth, leadership, execution, engagement, and profitability. We have great coaches that are there to help you, either one-on-one or in a group setting. Feel free to reach out to Erin in the chat here if you want to book a complimentary gap analysis session where you can actually get a score. And then so much of my time is the advisory part. I do a lot of different things actually. But the part of my work that, one part of my work that I really love is advising clients on grow or go. And I actually did a little tally this morning. So about half the clients that I work with directly have some unique growth opportunity, and the other half are working on some type of transition. A lot of stuff going on in that field right now. If you ever need to have a conversation, let me know. Again, we are taking next week off. If I didn't say it once, I'll say it again. I'm going to California. I'm going to go where there's warm weather. I'm going to get out and do a little hiking, have some fun. Aaron is going to go skiing pretty soon too. So Aaron gets a little bit of time off. Michelle's down in Florida. So I don't have any closing thoughts. I thought Phil did such a great job, and I don't have anything that would, I don't want to do anything to detract from a very powerful message. So you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to thank you, Phil. I think that was so powerful. And like you said, no matter what scale anybody is on, is if anyone's in an entrepreneurial or leadership role, these are the stories that are so powerful, right? And the vulnerability and the transparency that you shared is just, we're very, very grateful for that. So thank you.
All right, one other thing that I like to do is I like to see who the heck's on the call and say a little bit of a hello. 619, that sounds like San Diego. I'm not sure who that is, but Amanda, good morning, Amanda. How are you? I saw you in the chat. Hi, Anna. Anna, I think you're in California. Candace, good morning. Hi, Kathy. Christine B. Christine, thanks for contributing in the chat. Good morning, Christine Griffith. Hello, Jill. How are you? Karen, Deanda, where's Joe today? I don't see Joe. Say hi to Joe. Carla, good morning, California. How are you? Hi, Kate. Kip, I get to talk to you later today. I'm looking forward to it. Good morning, Linnell. Mark Gonzalez Pardo, how are you in New Mexico? Awesome to have you with us. Hello, Melissa, Michelle. Hello, Nina. How are you out in Pennsylvania? Hello, Rebecca, Ricardo. Hello, Salvador, Sam Mercado. We've already said hi to you. Shara from Oregon. Sheila Wilson. Good morning, Sheila. And then my friend Trent Lang from Wisconsin. Trent, I'm going to get you on the roundtable here soon. So you have an invite coming. So guys, it is 45 minutes after the hour. We are going to call it a wrap. Phil, you're always welcome to join us on one of these calls. We'll send you an invite going forward. And the rest of you, I think that today was an awesome session. We will see you in 2 weeks. Meanwhile, here's to a prosperous couple weeks, and we'll see you the next time around. Bye now.